Hello there folks, it is Toby from TIJ Music, and today I'm going to be reviewing possibly one of the best albums of all time, that is Back in Black by AC/DC from 1980. So straight into it today. It's the first album that AC/DC released following the real untimely passing of Bon Scott, but they recruited an equally good, possibly better vocalist. You can discuss that between yourselves in the comment, and maybe there's a little bit of ground for a future video there with that discussion. But it's the first album that they recorded with Brian Johnson. He was recruited after Bon Scott died. The band kind of went, no, we're not disbanding after Bon died. They did plan a follow-up to Highway to Hell, which was released in 1979. And from the release of High Voltage in 76 in the UK anyway, the band's career, and I'm really glad I'm doing this because AC/DC are my favourite band of all time. Since High Voltage up to Highway to Hell in 79, so in that 3-year stretch they're just going up and up and up and up and up. And Back in Black was another up. It was the best album that AC/DC have produced and released, that's my opinion. And they just never got to that height again, which is a real shame. But sometimes you've got to understand a band's peak to really understand how good they are. So they planned to follow up to Highway to Hell in February 1980, but because Bon Scott had died, they recruited Brian Johnson. And the album, therefore, was produced by Angus and Malcolm Young, as the previous albums had been, and Brian Johnson, and was recorded over 7 weeks in the Bahamas with the producer Robert John Mutt Lange, or Lange, not really sure, who was in the future married to Shania Twain, but we're not going to talk much about Shania Twain today, thank you very much. That he had worked on their previous album, Highway to Hell, and then would go on to work on For Those About to Rock, We Salute You, which was released in the next year, and he was producer on all of those 3 albums. So the all-black cover that was on Back in Black, it's in this corner, isn't it? Yeah, all the details are in this corner. The all-black cover that's on Back in Black is designed as a bit of mourning and remembrance for Bon Scott. And Atlantic Records, who were the record company that, of course, distributed this, I think, apart from in Australia, the Australian, I think, was Albert Productions. I might be wrong, but I think Atlantic was the US producer. US distributor, and Albert Productions was the Australian distributor. But Atlantic didn't agree with the black cover, but said they'd accept it with the grey kind of grey marking around the AC/DC. So I think it's a fantastic cover. It's a very memorable one and goes along some of the early ones in their collection. A real treat. Of course, a lot of people regard this album, well, AC/DC fans, some people hate AC/DC, probably wouldn't, but a lot of people who like AC/DC really consider this to be one of the best albums of all time. Not necessarily just the best AC/DC album, but up there with the best albums from all bands of all time. And it's clear that the customers thought that as well, and the people who listened to it. It was sold an estimated 50 million copies worldwide, and I'll just pop the certified sales on the screen here. Pretty impressive numbers, to be fair. It went platinum in a lot of countries. I think probably sold the most in the US, which is really a surprise, but had really good sales figures in the UK and Australia as well. And it's just incredible, really. It's up there, I think, probably with Michael Jackson's Thriller. I know The Greatest Hits by the Eagles is the second best-selling album of all time now. It's just stupid. And Dark Side of the Moon, I think, is in 4th. I think Back in Black slots in there in 3rd. And because of the success of the album, I think in America, Atlantic released Highway to Hell, If You Want Blood, You Got It, and I think Powerage, they re-released that. Well, the release that was actually for the first time in America. I think I've put that in my notes here. And actually, in Britain, it wasn't in America. They were re-released. So no, they weren't re-released. I've just botched that up completely. They re-entered the British charts basically once Back in Black came out. They got back into the British charts. And a nice stat is that they were 4 albums and the only band, apart from the Beatles, to have 4 albums in the British top 100 simultaneously. And I know I've got something about the US in here, so Atlantic, after the success of Back in Black in America, re-released Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap as an album from 1976 in America, and actually managed to eclipse Back in Black in America. Back in Black only got to number 4 in America, number 1 in the UK, but only number 4 across the pond. And Dirty Deeds actually went number 3, which is quite an interesting stat, actually. So the performers on this album is pretty much like they were up to this point, apart from, of course, Brian Johnson on lead. You've got Angus Young on lead guitar. You've got Malcolm on rhythm guitar and backing vocals. You've got Cliff Williams on bass and backing vocals, and Phil Rudd on the drums. And anything else I've got to say? Well, I suppose before we get into it, the charming thing is that AC/DC, as you can see, even up to Rock or Bust, their last and latest album. Don't want to say the last album yet. Apparently they are getting together and releasing some new music. it's just rock and roll. It's not hard rock, it's not heavy metal, it's not meant to be meaningful music. Therefore, in this review, I do tend to talk about the meanings of songs and talking about like what they mean and how that's relevant to the music. In this one, I'm just going to talk about the songs as they are. I'm not going too deep into them because the beauty with AC/DC is it's just rock and roll and they don't really care. And I think that's conveyed in quite a few of these songs, plus the fact a lot of them are about sex, and I don't really want to talk about that too much. So on the album, we've got 10 tracks that were written and produced by Angus Young, Malcolm Young and Brian Johnson. The first one being Hell's Bells, which is the second single off the album and just comes at a length of over 5 minutes. And what a way to start this album, absolutely fantastic. It's a fantastic start with the sound of the bells. They were actually real as well, unlike I think When the Bells Toil by Metallica, which was released 3 or 4 years later. They used a sound effect which replicated bells. Just noticed my arm nearly went off the armrest there. And AC/DC actually used real bells, and the sound is terrific. And what's really noticeable throughout this album is the guitar riffs are absolutely fantastic, particularly from Angus on lead guitar. And this really starts, with a good rhythm from Malcolm, and Angus with the guitar riffs are fantastic. But Brian's voice is an instant hit, really, with the passion and grit that he brings. And I'm going to bring something back that I haven't done for a few album reviews. This is going to be the rating system, and this one is a definite 10 out of 10. Next up is Shoot to Thrill, a length 7 seconds more than Hell's Bells at track 2. And it's a real surprise, actually, that this track wasn't a single, because it's definitely one of my favourites off the album. And it said on Wikipedia, I think, that even though it wasn't a single, it's become a real fan favourite and definitely has been in the live repertoire for the band for quite a while. I actually went to go and see AC/DC live in 2016 with Axl Rose at the helm. To be fair, he was pretty good, to be honest. I didn't really moan about the Brian Johnson not being there. If they go on tour again with Johnson, I'll definitely go and see him, just to say I've been to see Brian Johnson with AC/DC. But Shoot to Thrill, a little bit more fast-paced. It really good guitar work once again. It's really fast-paced again, with the sort of sexual overtones in the theme, so I'm not going to talk about that too much. But yeah, it's quite a bare-bones song, which is what AC/DC are so known for. It's a cracking track, and I really enjoy listening. It's really a timeless classic. So then we move now into what I feel on side 1 is more of the album tracks from 3. Yeah, that is 3. 3, 4 and 5. We've got the first 2 that are just absolute class, and even though Shoot to Thrill wasn't a single, I wouldn't necessarily call it what's called an album track either. It could really fit as a single. I'm surprised it really wasn't. So the third one of those is What Do You Do for Money, Honey? It doesn't really have it doesn't have as much as the first 2 singles, but I do really like it. It's a really good track, and it is more of an album track, but it stands out all the same as the previous ones. I've given the first 2 a 10 out of 10, Hell's Bells and Shoot to Thrill, but for this one it's a 9 out of 10. It's a brilliant song. It's again really goes into the album quite nice. It's really nice to see after those first 10 tracks. I think, well, not 10 tracks, as in first 2 10 out of 10 tracks. I think what makes it just a good album is that there's a lot of real great tracks on this one. If it had just been Hell's Bells and Shoot to Thrill, it would be like, it's not really great. But What Do You Do for Money, Honey is another great song. Talks about how a woman's got fast cars and all this, and doesn't understand why. The singer's trying to understand why that's for. And it's a really good track. Nice to see it's not one about sex. Yeah, it's a really good track and a real timeless classic once again. So next up we move into track 4, which is Giving the Dog a Bone. Now this is another good song, to be fair. It's not one of my favourites off the album, hence why I'm only giving it a 7 out of 10 rating. It's catchy enough, and this one has definitely got sexual overtones, and if you can figure this out, fair play. It's quite daunting when you figure out what the song's actually about, but I'm not going to discuss that today. But yeah, it's a good song, it's catchy enough, probably not as good as the other 3, so it's a 7 out of 10. And then track 5 is Let Me Put My Love Into You, and I think the guitar riff is better on this one, which gives an 8 out of 10. It's nicely paced as well, and it is an 8 out of 10, yeah, it's an 8 out of 10. It's alright, I need to get this right, because I've averaged all these to get an average rated at the end, so I don't want to put a 9 on this, and then at the end of the review, people comment, no, it's not the rating that you said it is, you've lied. But it's a real good song, 8 out of 10, and it rounds off side 1 quite nicely, actually. The first side is quite a really good side, and it's full of cracking music, as side 2 definitely is as well. So now we move into the highlight of the album for me. It's Back in Black. It's a song that pretty much everyone, I'd say, not everyone in the world, but pretty much 99% of people know. It's the highlight of the album, isn't it? It's got such a memorable opening, and it really starts side 2 off with a bang the second half of the album. The lyrics are just great as well. It's nicely paced as well. Shoot to Thrill's a real fast-paced and probably driving song, but Back in Black is just real rock and roll, and it really features all of the band really well, which is what AC/DC do so well. You know, you've got fantastic guitar work of Cliff, Malcolm and Angus. You've got the good drum work and the vocals are equally as good as well. So 10 out of 10 for this one. Don't really need much explanation about this song. Just a fantastic rocker and really one that you can never forget when talking about DC. Next up is You Shook Me All Night Long. Again, another 10 out of 10 really. I love this track. It seems to be quite a universal favourite actually. Quite a lot of people tend to like this one that I speak to. And it has got that sort of poppy nature with how catchy it is. But that's what makes it so good really. Back in Black and maybe the previous singles don't necessarily have that. But it's really got a real catchy nature, this one has. And it's a good foot tapper as well. It's got something that the other songs don't. It's just got the charm that the other songs don't. And I think that if you're not a DC fan, this is probably the song off the album you're most likely to like. And it is. It's a real cracker. And that really rounds off the 7 tracks so far that are brilliant on the album. We then move into Have a Drink on Me and Shake a Leg, tracks 8 and 9. But I'm going to talk about these together because they are quite similar. They're good enough, you know, that they are decent songs, but they are weak links in the grand scheme of things. I think I'll give both of these a 6 out of 10. Yeah, they could have fitted onto previous AC/DC albums, I think, particularly Have a Drink on Me. It's just got that nature. Sounds a little bit like Bon in terms of the guitar work, but they're half decent songs. I think Shake a Leg's quite good in its lyrics and its meaning that kind of go, we'll do what we want. You know, I think the critics were quite harsh on AC/DC at the time, but basically it just says we'll do what we want, and I think that's a great lyric. But personally, I don't really think they've got the nature, they've got the really good nature that the rest of the songs do on the album. They don't, I wouldn't say stick out like a sore thumb, but they're certainly not as good as the other 7 so far. But then we move into the final track. So after Shake a Leg, Rock and Roll Ain't No Noise Pollution is really... Oh, no. It's just Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution, that's right. That's the 4th single off the album. Back in Black was the 3rd. And You Shook Me All Night Long, surprisingly, was the 1st single off the album. But Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution really brings the album back to its roost. It's kind of a protest song again, kind of saying, you know, I don't care, you know, it's not noise pollution. Rock and roll is just as it is, and the critics ought to back off, basically. And it's a really good quote I've got here. In 1980, rock needed a champion. Led Zeppelin had disbanded. Mainstays like Black Sabbath, Rolling Stones and Kiss were going into ballads. And even worse with Kiss, disco. I might review the Unmasked album, but not anytime soon. Oh dear. But yeah, even worse, disco. And rock needed a champion, and AC/DC were. And that really sums up this album, to be honest. A 10 out of 10 for Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution. It's a fantastic track. And it's just really roots rock, which is something I think is fantastic. There's other bands that I really like, really good rock bands, the likes of Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Thin Lizzy. I could talk about them all day. Guns N' Roses, Judas Priest. I'm trying to think of other ones now, but we'll come back to those when we do reviews for them. But what I love about AC/DC, it's just roots rock. It's just rock and roll. There's not really much meaning to it. It's just rock and roll hard, and the guitar work and the talent really from Angus, Malcolm, and Brian in writing these songs and producing them and putting them out are really good. Fair play to the producer as well, who produced this album really well. I think he really strived for success, did Robert John Mutt Lange. I think I'll just call him Mutt, that's a lot easier. I know that Brian Johnson had a lot of takes in this album. He had a hell of a lot of takes with the songs that he did, because Much wants to get them perfect. And the band all went, I think, to LA it was, to mix the album and edit the album together. Really nice to see that, and yeah, it's really a masterpiece. So the overall rating, surprisingly, with all the 10 out of 10 songs, is an 8.6 out of 10, which I think is absolutely fair enough. It does take into account those poorer songs that we had before, Shake a Leg and Have a Drink on Me. They've never really grown on me. I've listened to them a few times, and while they are good on the album, they're certainly not terrible songs. They're not the best either, so that's what brings the album down, those 2 songs. But apart from that, they're a group of absolutely fantastic songs. And I really wanted to review this one today. I thought, you know what, let's have a listen to Back in Black again. It's a fantastic album. It's definitely the peak of AC/DC's career. And as I said, something they really never followed again. It's a real shame, actually, because as they went into the 80s, look at I've got a little bit album chart of DC on my wall. You've got For Those About to Rock, Flicker the Switch, Fly on the Wall, and Blow Up Your Video in the 80s. They're half-decent albums. I haven't actually listened to the entirety of those. What I've listened to, they're good. They are good albums, but they don't really surpass Back in Black at all. I think that because this was Britain and the motivation was this because of Bon Scott, I think that's what really makes this album thrive. And it really brings, you know, the previous work all together, because it is a tribute to Bon Scott, even though none of the songs link directly to Bon Scott. I know a lot of people think, oh, it's a Bon Scott tribute, all the songs are. It's not, I don't think, anyway. You can have your own views about that. But I could ramble all day about this album. It's a fantastic album. Definitely go and check it out if you haven't done already. I do plan on probably getting a physical copy at some point. I haven't obviously got a physical copy. So all I've got to show you is really my AC/DC shirt. I think I've got 4 AC/DC shirts. I think I've got a Highway to Hell one, which I've actually worn on one of my other videos. Maybe even the first video I did on the channel. Black Ice and Rock or Bust. Definitely review all those albums at some point. But if you want to request any album reviews, make sure to leave them down in the comments. But firstly, go to the channel page, check if they're on the channel already. But if not, feel free to request anything in the comments. Love to have a chat with you as well in the comments if you've got any discussion to have about the songs. Maybe you disagreed with some of the things I said. That's absolutely fine. That's what we're all here for. But for today, I've been CIJ. I've been Toby from TIJ Music. Can't quite miss out that Toby bit. I've been Toby from TIJ Music. Thank you very much for your company today. I hope you've enjoyed the album review. And I will see you guys in the next one. Rock on.